Welcome to today's episode of the Dog Training Dogma with your host, Jonathan Katz. With over 20 years in the industry, I've done everything from dog walking to training service dogs. I'm really proud to present my take on dog training. Today, as always, we have in the studio with us is Hood Red Heather, a.k.a. the Hitman's Bodyguard.
Hello, hello.
Welcome. And today we have a special guest, is my apprentice, Isaiah. Welcome, Isaiah.
Hey, how's it going?
Isaiah's been training with me for 2 years.
Yeah.
And apprenticing for a year.
Like a year and a half, I think now.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
Right? I really wanted to have Isaiah on because, I really enjoy his take on dog training. And, as a mentor, you give people knowledge, but they then have to take that knowledge and do what with it?
Make it for your own.
Right? So, it's, I just want to say I really enjoy how you've taken the information you've been given, and you've taken the information you've been given by other trainers, and every person that you're in front of, you clearly have something that you can learn from. Last weekend, or a few weekends ago, we had Jeff and Paul here, and the compliment that I enjoyed the most was them both telling me how good you are.
And I appreciate that.
You don't get praised often, right? You don't get praised often for reasons that we're not gonna overpraise, because what ends up happening is my goal is to never give anyone a big head. I want you to be confident in what you're doing, but ego should not drive our skill set.
Right.
And so, but for two people that I respect to then, as just outsiders looking in and having seen you from more towards the beginning to seeing you now,
right?
And you wanting to understand the why, and watching you being fascinated by what Paul was saying and what Jeff is saying, I really enjoy that, and I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Everything that I do is only what you taught me. I only just do my little spin on it.
For sure, and you should, and rightfully so. I'm not trying to create cookie cutter dog trainers.
Right.
I'm just trying to give you the knowledge and the power to be able to communicate, and you got to figure out the best way for you, because we also have to figure out what's the best way for each dog.
Right.
Train the dog in front of us. Today was supposed to be a different episode. Today was supposed to be training decoy versus trial decoy. And so, but I got a message this morning that decided that we're going to, do a different episode today. And today's episode is, who's a wash? The trainer, the handler, or the dog? Yeah. Okay? This is a topic that I'm very passionate about. This is a topic that's, I think, very important in the dog training community. I think you first have to ask yourself, would your dog wash you out?
Yeah.
Are you a shitty handler and you communicate horribly and the dog doesn't understand what you want, and so now you're a washout?
Right.
How many times is it I was talking about it in previous episodes, is, a trainer telling me that my dog is a wash. This is a dog that I love. This is a dog that I care about. This is my dog. And you telling me that my dog is a wash is like telling me that my kid sucks.
Right.
Like, how fucking dare you?
And I always said, the biggest thing that I always thought about with this is, if you were to say that, I only train a certain type of handler, I probably wouldn't still be here at this point.
For sure.
Because I wasn't the toughest handler at the beginning. So, what you would wash me out because I can't handle X and Y and Z. You just have to train everybody and every dog how they need to be trained is how I look at it.
And here's and if you're using yourself as an example, is when you can see and read potential, you just have to bring the talent and the skill out, but it's all about seeing the potential.
Right.
If you don't see the potential, then, so there are times when a dog's just not going to do the job, right? But, is it because of the way that we're communicating? Sometimes in my career, I've been training dogs for over 20 years. I've washed 3 dogs out. And all 3 of them went to places, and I put them in homes that love them more than I did. Mm-hmm. And I love the dogs. But I only have X amount of time in the day. I only have X amount of time to give to my dogs. Here's the one thing that about to go on the topic of collecting dogs is you only have X amount of time in the day.
Right.
And the more dogs you add, the more time you're taking away from the other dogs. Now, if you have a bunch of pet dogs that coexist, or working dogs that are also pets that can coexist, like that's an easy way for them to all get time and to be able to spend quality time. And obviously we're not always training, right? The dog has to still be a dog, like has to actually live as a dog. But, you know, like, yes, you can have multiple dogs coexisting as a pack and they can all get spend time with you. But, you know, training takes time and each dog needs X amount of training per day. And now I personally feel when you have more than 2 working dogs, unless it's like your full-time job, right? If it's your full-time job, then that's what you do. But anyone else that has other lives and can't devote all day and every day to this, you know, there's only so much time in the day and you have to be realistic with how much time you're putting into that dog.
Right.
Right. You know, so unfortunately, I find that a lot of trainers, they don't understand the concept of let the dog mature, right? So what this all came from was this morning, I got a message from someone that has a puppy from me. And it really meant a lot to them to hear me talk about my story and how I work with my dogs, having, you know, siblings. And
well, Puma was also
a washout, yes.
So yes.
Yes, Puma was a washout from a handler who her mentor was a world level IPO competitor, IPO helper.
Helper, right.
In my opinion, like I'm the one that says the guy is one of the best in the world. I've seen his work. It is mechanical. It is pressure. It's really like if I did IPO and I competed at a world level, you know, like that would be the guy that I would want to work my dog because he's going to bring out power because he's such a powerful helper. I don't think he can train. And you haven't seen a lot of dogs come out of his program of like, oh my God, look at all these high titling IPO dogs.
Yeah.
He trained, you know, it's the old adage of time to offense and poke him with a stick.
Yeah.
Right? Time to offense and whip him. And Puma doesn't like being whipped.
Yeah. And even that though, like there's still a finesse to doing that.
For sure.
Like there's a way you could do that the right way without harming a dog. Like,
for sure.
You got to read threshold. You have to know. You know what I'm saying? Again, it's like all how you say like. For me, I'm not like at this point how I am in my career, I guess you could say, especially because I have my dog Tank. Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna ever tell nobody to wash the dog out just because it's like if this is your dog and you want to do this, I'll get you to the maximum that this dog could get to, and that's how I look at it. So.
And what were you told originally with Tank?
That like he was just sitting on a place cot in the training room, and I was like, I want to try with him, and they were like, he couldn't do it, and I was like, oh.
They just looked at him?
Yeah, they just said, nah, he wouldn't do it. And I said, all right, I guess. And then, yeah.
And look at him now.
Yeah.
It's wild to me. And so, you know, Tank has his PDC.
Right.
He's getting ready for his one.
Yeah.
And when he went for his PDC,
the first
decoy
time.
the first time, the decoy in the carjacking ran, I think it was like the first 4 dogs.
Yeah.
And then Tank was up, and then Tank didn't out.
Yeah.
And so anytime you'll always hear me say, I'd rather have a dog that doesn't out than a dog that they have to prey bite out.
Yeah.
You know, a dog that doesn't out, that's an easy problem to fix. That's something that can be fixed, you know, on a Saturday night, one session of some positive punishment, and the dog learns, okay, I can't get away with this, and then the next day they out. We've done it many times, and that's basically what Tank needed.
Yeah.
Right? But I'd rather build the dog up to the point where they're too sexy, they're too strong, and now we have to knock them down a couple pegs, but you've already built them. My issue with instilling control into a dog too young before they can mentally and have the maturity to understand it is they don't understand why they're being controlled. Like, for anyone that wants to understand how I raise my dogs, I want my puppies to act like Ricky Bobby's children in Talladega Nights. Now, at some point, Grandma comes in and says, I'm going to put control on you.
Right.
And the kids look at Grandma and go, you're going to, you know, tame us like wild broncos or whatever they say.
But I think the problem with that is everybody has like a set oh, the dog needs to have control at
Do
6
X
months.
amount at certain time.
Yeah, and it's like if you have for example, I'm going to just say the common breeds, right? If you have a Dutch Shepherd, no, you're not going to be putting control on him until he's about like a year and a half, maybe 2, maybe even later, because that's
Depends
the
on the
breed.
dog.
Right.
Now, some dogs, if they're really strong, you have to put control really young.
Of course.
But the average person that is getting the average Dutchie,
Right.
they're not getting apex predators.
You got to let it mature.
It's not a dog that Hans Pega's going to own.
Right.
Right.
And it could,
'Cause
you can
those
turn
dogs
it
are not
into
really fun to live with.
You can turn it into a strong dog, though.
Yes.
These dogs. It's just you have to let it. It's how Jeff. This is the quote from Jeff. They're crock-pot puppies. You have to let them sit and simmer.
Yep. And that's the thing with the Dutch dogs. That's the thing with the Belgian dogs is they take more time, but it's like a fine wine.
But then that's the dogs that everybody wants. So it's like, why wouldn't you?
But people want the end picture. They don't want to go through the process.
Right.
They don't want to do all of the work or wait the time that they have to wait. When anyone ever asks me, when do you put control into a dog? The answer is always, always, always going to be it depends.
When they ask for it. That's what you always told me.
When they ask for it. Now, what if I have a dog that never asked for it?
Then you never need it necessarily, because if they're always doing what you said, then there's not a problem.
So then
that's true.
So that's part of the answer. The reason why you can't give an obligatory you have to start control at 6 months. To me, what did the dog tell you that they need that? Now, there are dogs. I had the woman that I actually traded Puma as a puppy for a woman called me and she said, I have a Malinois puppy and the puppy's biting me. And I'm like, okay, puppy's biting you. And she's like, no. This puppy is really biting me. And I'm like, okay, every trainer tells me that it's just a puppy and he's just biting. And she goes, no, this dog has bad intentions. And I'm like, well, first of all, I'm going to guess it's a Czech puppy, right? And she goes, how did you know that? Czech dogs tend to be more aggressive.
Right.
The only Malinois puppies I ever see that are like trying to eat their owners at 4 months old are Czech puppies. Right? Unless there's like a nerve issue.
Right.
But like these dogs are legitimately like they're demonstrating apex predator behavior at very young age, and it's alarming. Those dogs need control at young. They'll be amazing dogs.
Right. But they can handle that. It's every person, every dog is different.
So when it comes to teaching people, how many people I would say for the most part in the question of who do you wash? Do you wash the trainer? Do you wash the handler or do you wash the dog? I would say at least 50% of all washouts are the trainers a washout. Okay? Because people that are new and people that don't know any better, people are going to take the advice of the person that they've entrusted with their training. Or they're going to wash out the handler because the handler is going to say, well, that's my dog and I love it. I'm going to find a different trainer.
Right.
Right. And that's the key thing. That's one of my favorite things about Dogma is we're a safe zone for everyone. Like we want to help everyone. We're not taking claim to anything. We're just trying to be a safe space for everyone to come and get good training on their dog.
Right.
And our key thing is when you're in another system, we don't want to put you on our system. We want to help you with your system. And we want to help modify what you're doing just to be successful and help with communication. But we're not trying to change the way you communicate with your dog, just help with whatever communication that you're doing, right? So I don't try to change people's markers.
You just try to know what the markers are.
Exactly. And so I'll stop people in the middle of a session and I'll say, what does this mean? What does that mean? Right? Just to help with that communication. I would say that for the most part, at least 50% of the time, it's the trainer that's going to be a washout.
Yeah.
To me, it's the trainer's inability to adjust how they train to that individual dog. Like them just looking at Tank. Now, we can very easily have an answer for level of experience is how many dogs have you seen those trainers train?
Right.
That have been successful, that have looked good. Like, to me, I want to look at a trainer's dog. I want to watch them train their dog. And honestly, furthermore, like, I want to watch them just interact with their dog. You know, there's a video going around on the internet of a pet dog trainer, and he goes to, like, they're doing like a go home video or a demo video, and he goes to touch the dog, and the dog's looking away from him. So it's clearly right away you can tell there's avoidance behavior. The dog's not looking at him like, oh my God, you taught me things. The dog's like, I don't want to look at this guy. And he goes to touch the dog, and the dog flinches, and the dog like looks at him. Like, unsuspecting dog owners are not necessarily going to understand to read that body language, but that is clearly some sort of trauma there.
Right.
Right. So, you know, how many times like I was talking about this on previous episodes is, you know, when people are constantly washing out dogs, I see trainers and it's like, get a dog, wash it, get a puppy, wash it out, get a puppy, wash it out, get a puppy, wash it out. What are they looking for?
Yeah, you said one or two things. Either they're bad at picking puppies or they're bad at training. So
now, I would say for the most part, I think people are probably good at picking dogs. You know, like it's clear to see when you look at a litter of puppies and you can see of a strong litter, because that's the key thing. I made a mistake. I had to wash out my first Malinois puppy. I waited forever to get a puppy. I wanted a Malinois puppy forever. I waited, and then I went with a friend of mine to look at a litter of puppies. And while I was waiting for him to show up, I was just hanging out with the litter, and the breeder pulled out a vacuum and started vacuuming. All of the litter went to the other side except for the puppy that I picked. Mm-hmm. So the mistake that I made was I picked the strongest puppy of a weak litter, and I didn't know any better, and it was very hard to wash that dog out. Now, ultimately, the dog went to a place that was better than me. So for me, I feel like, you know, moving on up to the east side, like I'm trying to give them a better life than what I could personally give them, because I just don't have the time. I just don't have the space. I have 4 dogs, and, you know, so I have 2 competition dogs. You know, I'm like, I have an itch for a puppy, only because, like, I have goals and I want another puppy to be able to do that. But I also don't want another dog. It's so much work to give the dogs the time that they need to be able to train them properly, to get them ready for the fight that we're getting them ready for.
Yeah. I also feel like a product of washing dogs comes from everybody being stuck in their ways in terms of, like, the dog needs to be trained this way, and if it can't handle this training, then it's therefore not good.
Now, I will say I've had dogs that were really cool dogs, but I didn't enjoy them only because the language that I wanted to speak, they didn't necessarily respond well to.
But then I wouldn't even... So then I want to also clarify...
And the dog's not a washout. I'm just saying I didn't keep the dog. I sold the dog to someone that was going to enjoy them more than me, only because of our communication.
Right.
Right? It's like I've been in relationships. I have exes that, you know, when things were great, they were and they're awesome people. We just didn't necessarily vibe communication wise.
Right. And I wouldn't even call that a wash. That's what I was about to say.
Right.
Because it's like, for me, when the wash has a negative connotation, it's
100%.
like, oh, this dog's a wash. Like, well, why don't you just train it the way it wanted to be trained? Like, if he just wants to roll around in the mud as his reward, why can't that just be his reward? Like that, like, you know, little things like that.
Let the dog be a dog?
Yeah.
Like, just let him be a dog until he doesn't need to be. Like let him be a puppy.
Foos, healing. You healing? Go roll in the mud.
Indirect reward to mud rolls. See, again, your ability to think outside the box, right? What do we give the dog that he wants? Now, mud rolls is not in the 5 primary resources.
Of course. I'm just saying, if that's what the dog enjoys, you know what I mean.
That would be, to me, that would be a jackpot.
Okay.
So that would be when my training session's over and I found the thing that I love, now you can go over and then spend your time rolling around in the mud.
Right.
Again, I'm not going to do any of that, but only because the
that's
dog's going to get dirty. But hey, if that's what motivates your dog, that's what you got to do. But if anything, we're using this as a metaphor.
Exactly.
To explain the fact
train the dog in front of you.
That you train the dog in front of you, and you give the dog what they want. You know, I was giving a seminar years ago, And, a woman was like, I was trying to help her with her communication, helping her. She was using positive reinforcement. And I look at her and the dog's just not enthusiastic. And I go, like, what are you giving the dog? And she's like, kibble. Mm-hmm. And so every time I travel to give a seminar, I always bring a roll of Happy Howies. And I bring a 2-pound roll of Happy Howies as an example of, if I give you something different. I love sushi, but if you fed me sushi every single day, at some point, I might do it for 2 or 3 days, but at some point, I'm going to go, I need a burger. Like, I need a salad. Like, I need something else. I can't eat sushi every day. Mm-hmm. Now, to the opposite of, you only get sushi when it's a special event, when it's something exciting. I love hibachi, but going to hibachi like on a regular basis is not realistic.
Yeah, that's crazy. The
amount of time it takes, and then they're trying to squirt the sock in your mouth, and I'm like, it's noon on a Tuesday. Like, I'm gonna, I can't be drunk going back to,
Yeah.
So, but when it's something exciting, when it's a fun event, that's a fun experience, right? So you're gonna do it every so often, a few times a year. You can't. How many times have you been to Brazilian barbecue, all you can eat, and then you're like, I want to eat salad for 5 days, and I'm not going to touch another piece of meat for a week, right? So, but the dog that never gets it. Now, when someone says, hey, where are we going for, I judged a trial last year, and when I was asking the hosts, like, who was doing the judge's dinner, like, where is it going to be? And she's like, I'm going home and going to sleep. There's no judge's dinner. I was like, okay. And my buddy Syke from South Bay, shout out to Syke, he's like, hey, my crew's going out to Brazilian barbecue. You should come with us. And I was like, hell yeah. Like, I was excited about it. I was going to pay my own way because the hosts didn't even go like, here's $100, go pay for your barbecue. Like, it was just like, go fuck yourself. And at the end, they ended up buying me dinner. Like, they bought me my judge's dinner. Like, that meant a lot to me. Even though I had the money in my pocket, I was ready to spend it. But, it was the thought that someone acknowledged the fact. But, like, that was really exciting. The whole day when I found out that there wasn't a judge's dinner and I was sad, and then, okay, now we're going to Brazilian barbecue, I was like, okay, and now I was hyped, right? So, like, I asked, can we give the dog some Happy Howies? And she's like, nope, this is what the dog gets. And I said, but, like, why? Because this is what he gets. My mentor in Belgium, his dogs are crackheads for kibble. And I go, okay. And some dogs are. Like, Uzi, I could have trained Uzi with a leaf. A leaf. I just have to keep pulling. He'd shred them. But, like, I could literally pull a tuft of hair off of a German Shepherd, a long-haired German Shepherd, so a tuft of hair, I could play tug with him. Anything that I would give him, he'd be happy about. Yeah, you gave him kibble, he'd be fucking super happy because you were just giving him something. But that's not necessarily the case.
Right.
Like, that's not often that dogs are that high drive. Sometimes you have to motivate them. And so it was really bothering me. I couldn't wrap my head around and the fact that we couldn't give the dog anything else. So I continue to teach, but the entire time I'm teaching and all the rest of the dogs that I'm working with, my brain is just going like, why? I want to know the answer. Like, why? The reason why I like Neil Tyson deGrasse, I'm like, because he gives you the answer of why.
Yeah.
Like, why? I want to know. And so we eat lunch, and when lunch is like winding down, she's like standing there, and I walk over and I'm like, hey, your dog has food allergies? And she's like, no. And I'm like, so why? And that's when she said the fact that her mentor's dogs are crackers for kibble. And I said, but your dogs aren't. So if you want more, you're going to have to build that hope through something more desirable.
Right.
But I will tell you, 9 times out of 10, there's always going to be a 10%, right? There's always going to be 10%ers, but 9 times out of 10, you offer the dog something different. It doesn't necessarily have to be better. I've had dogs where the people were feeding like, raw chicken or like shredded chicken, and we're like, here's Happy Howies. the kid that lives, the privileged child that lives in a home with a full-time cook or, private chef and eats the most gourmet meals in the world. What does that kid want to eat? McDonald's. So it's always the different that's exciting.
Right.
Right? So how many times have dogs been washed out just because they weren't crackheads for kibble?
Yeah. Well, even on the, that's the example for obedience that we could say, but protection is probably more often where you see people saying that dogs is a washout.
Oh.
And it's like, in the same example of like, oh, what would you want to eat? The people that would like to wash out a bunch of dogs, if they could go in a room with 4 people and just get the shit kicked out of them. Excuse my cursing, but I felt like it was necessary at the time.
Yes.
Get the shit kicked out of them.
Yep.
If they could survive that, then I'd be like, okay, then you say dogs is washout, I get it.
Okay, so your analogy is how many dogs are jumped in to protection work?
Right.
Like, yo, if you can take this.
Yeah, exactly.
Now we'll train you.
Yeah. And but those people that's doing that wouldn't be able to survive the same in like if you gave it the human, you see what I'm saying? Yeah, that's what frustrates me the most, I feel like, with the protection, because it's like, I don't care if he's not the strongest dog. If in his mind he is, then he will be. You see what I'm saying? Because that's all that matters. Like, I'm not, and then at the end of the day, if we're talking about just regular protection, like, forget sport for a second, I'm never letting my dog fight alone. So, I don't, even if you try to hit the stick, my dog has a stick problem, okay, I'm going to take the stick out your hand. Now we're good.
So, now there is a time and a place where you're going to send the dog while you go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm going to send the dog while I'm going to grab my gun. But there's also going to be situations where, like, no, the dog's on you and I'm on you.
Right.
I was training in Brooklyn one day. I was helping a client with their dog, and I had my pit bull Snoopy out, and he's just in a down. And we're training this Corso, like, back and forth in Bed-Stuy. And these 2 guys walk by me, and the guy's like, yo, that dog better not come towards me because I'm going to shoot him. And I was like, shut the fuck up. I'm like, keep going. And he goes, nah. And he pulls up his shirt, and he has a sawed-off shotgun in his pants. And I'm like, dude, the amount of time it's going to take you to pull that shot, he's like a little bit farther away than you are.
Right.
You have to pull that entire barrel out and then put it to me. Like, I said, the dog's going to be on you and I'm going to be on you, so just fucking keep walking.
Right.
And he was like, all right. And he just kept walking. But, like, I killed him with logic.
Right.
But, like, so, yes, furthermore, if the dog's in real life, if the dog's in a fight, I'm in a fight with them. Or I'm getting something to go and help us all, right? But, how many dogs are just sent into the wolves?
Right.
How many dogs are sent into every time we see a dog in trial that they have to yell prey bite, it automatically means that the dog was not prepared for the fight.
Right.
The dog
and that's why the prey bite happens.
That's why the prey bite happens. We've passed nerve threshold.
Right.
Because even if, and this is just my opinion, and this is the way that I train, so for everyone wants to understand, like, my ultimate theory on protection work is, and especially training for PSA and sport, what is the most fucked up picture that the dog can see? What is the most difficult picture the dog's going to see? Does the decoy fall down and roll over them? Like, whatever is going to be the most difficult thing, are they going to be slammed into a truck? Obviously, we don't want to injure the dog, but, like, are they going to be pushed into a vehicle? Are they going to be put in compromising situations? The dog's going to be trained to see that. The dog's going to see that. The dog's going to see more. They're going to fight a stronger fighter in training than they're ever going to fight in trial.
Right.
Right? And if you train the dog properly and you train the dog that way, in trial, when you put them up against really strong decoys, the dogs actually look better. Because you've taught them to train through that level of power and to have that peak of power, and now, like, they're now up against a worthy opponent, and the dog's still going to win. Because the dog wins 100% of the time. If we teach that dog that they only win 99.999% of the time, like, you've taught that dog failure. And my dog should not know failure.
Doubt.
Why do they have doubt? Like, why? Well, trialing your dog is your girl putting you through a loyalty test. And you win every time because you're not a cheater. You care about the relationship. You care about what you're doing. Like, we put the dog in the fight when the dog is ready for the fight or over ready for that fight. When I go for my PDC, my dog should be able to take level 1 pressure. Even though there's never going to be can curtains in a PDC, but my dog should have been trained through that. Like, we're going to do that in foundation. And we're going to train the dog in front of us. You know, why are we saying that this dog's not capable when he's being trained on a scale of, you know, from French to Belgian? Right. Like, people, you see people and they're like, oh my God, look at that dog mature quickly. But, you know, a lot of times when people get quick to mature dogs, they actually, when they don't understand it, they don't know any better, they actually create anxiety in that dog because they teach the dog the wrong picture. And they actually teach the dog that things that should be forward and they should move towards, now these are things they should be hesitant to because of way that they create reactions.
Right. And then, yeah, again, it becomes the dog's a wash because it can't handle, but then it's still there a fuck up. Yeah. Ultimately, it is the handler or the trainer most of the time. I would say probably, in my head, from what I've seen, more limited than you, but...
That's why I said 50.
Yeah.
I would say 50%.
Well, you said 50% trainer, so then I would say another, like,
45% handler, and then 5% the dog.
Because, again, also
I'm going
the
to say
question...
50, 40, and 10.
Okay. Because for me, the question is also, what would constitute a wash for a dog? Because when you went to pick the dog, you obviously love the dog. And if the max potential, like Tank, for example, his 3 is a 1. If that makes sense, right? Like, his maximum is a 1. Yeah. So if we get a 1, like, beautiful, you retire. Now he lives the Cougar Puma life. You know what I'm saying?
Champagne bottles.
That's what I'm saying.
We popping bottles.
He's chilling. So and then for me, that's a big accomplishment.
Already the PDC. He was told that he wouldn't do anything.
Right. So I feel like
the PDC is a huge accomplishment. But what did you originally want to do after the PDC?
Other entry levels and other sports.
Other entry levels. And I waited till you got your PDC, and then I said, hey, can we put a 1 on him before we do those other things?
Right.
Because, yes, is the PDC impressive with taking a dog that you were told is never going to do anything and putting a PDC on it? But I don't believe that's his 3.
Right.
I believe the 1 is his 3.
Right.
Right? You know, a 1 is a tremendous accomplishment because... So here's the difference between other sports. You know, a Schutzen 1, or a French ring 1, or a Mondial ring 1. You know, people are not going to look at it pressure-wise as the same PSA 1. The goal is to run the dog off the field. So in the PDC, we test we get your feet wet. Mm-hmm. You step on the field. You're successful. The dog's had success. You've had success. Limited requirements of behaviors and limited requirements of bites. Right? Easier bites, still pressure. But nonetheless, there's no stick hits, right? Now we go to the 1s. You go to the 1s, and now we're testing the dog. Run that fucking dog off my field. As a judge, every time a dog that was supposed to get ran because I can clearly see the decoy just stopped and the dog rebit, so the dog only had to take half of the pressure of half of the drive. And I'm like, your job was to run that dog. Now, I don't want to see dogs get ran. I hate seeing dogs get ran, but we're here to test dogs. And if I don't do my job and the decoys don't do their job, then you're letting dogs pass that don't deserve it.
Right.
I want to be tested.
Yeah.
The reason why I bring outside decoys to my trials is I want to be tested. I want my training to be tested. I want my club members to be tested. I want to show that it's not the decoy, it's the dog.
Yeah.
It's not the decoy, it's the dog, right? And it's all about the dog. Without dogs, you know, would we ever even know each other?
Yeah.
Right? Like it's all of this is because of the dogs. We're all here because of the dogs. Dogma Academy for Dog Trainers is literally here for the dogs, right, and for the trainers and for the handlers. I hate washing dogs out. Now, with that said, there are times and places when it's not the best, like you're not the best home for the dog.
Right.
Or that's not the job that's suited best for the dog. Maybe the dog, I impulse bought a Lacanois. For everyone who doesn't know what a Lacanois is, it's like a wired-haired Malinois. And I had a client that came to me. He called me. He's like, oh, I got 2 dogs I need help with. And I was like, oh, what kind of dogs do you have? He goes, oh, you probably never heard of them. And he's like, they're called Lacanois. And I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, I've only ever seen, I've been breeding Malinois at the time for, 9 years. But I'd only ever seen one in person before at a French ring trial. I watched my mentor, Walid Malouf, compete for, I think it was Ring 2 with his dog Jetta in Massachusetts. And I saw a Lacanois got his Ring 1. I had never seen one before. And so client had these two. He's like, oh, we're like doing a lesson. He's like, yeah, because and my puppies. And I'm like, stop. I'm like, you have puppies on the ground? And he goes, yeah, By the time I got to the litter, I was, it was a litter of 12, and I was like, 6th or 7th to pick. And so of the puppies, I made a mistake. I picked what I would normally pick as a Malinois, but now hindsight's 2020, understanding that the father had a lot more defense. The father was 85 pounds, and he had never done bite work in his life, and I back-tied him, and I cracked a whip at him, and he was going to eat me. And he looked like, it was like a really aggressive Fonzie bear, right? He had all this hair scruff, and but like forward aggression.
Yeah.
Right? There was no fear there. And I was like, I like this dog. I want this dog. But I picked a prey happy dog, and I should have picked the puppy. But the puppy I really would have wanted was the puppy that went first.
Yeah.
That was the biggest, most confident. That's reminds you of the father the most. But so I'm very lucky. Jeff took the puppy from me, and Jeff had someone locally to him, and ironically it was the same woman that owned the Lacanois that I had seen before get its Ring 1.
Oh.
And the dog went to her, and they dock dove.
Okay.
Dock dove? Is that what you say? Is it dock dove?
Dock
They're
diving.
Dock diving.
Dock
Whatever,
diving.
yeah.
They are
Dock
dock diving, or they dock dove. I don't know. I don't do dock diving. I think it's cool. But the dog ended up being like a dock diving champion.
Yeah.
That was the right venue for the dog. So that 10% a lot of times it's just not the right venue for the dog.
Right.
Right? Or what happens that we messed up in foundation and we miscommunicated? How many times like people bring us puppies and they're just like, they need some tweaking of how the dog is responding to environments because they're allowing the dog to be like too engaged with their environment as opposed to being engaged with you, right? Mm-hmm. How many times do we see these like Dutch puppies that walk around and they look like they're bulletproof? And sometimes they are, and sometimes I would say like, or bulldogs, like they're just stupid and they just don't notice that anything is around them.
Yeah.
The hyper intelligent Malinois that is like, I freaking notice everything. What's that? Oh my God, what's that? Now, every time they notice something, you have to teach them how to respond to that.
Right.
Right? Do they go forward? Do they stay in the same place? Do they go backwards? Like, it's all about teaching the dog how to respond. If they're not giving natural responses, if they're giving full natural responses, I let them be natural. But if I have to now condition a response only because they notice something that is clearly a product of environment, that's clearly a product of, whereas if the dog lived on a farm in Holland, the dog would never see that. Mm-hmm. Right? So, life is a product of environment. When babies are born, are they born to a certain social status and monetarily? It's like, it's what environment you're born into.
Right.
Right? Was I born as a shelter puppy? Or was I born to the top breeder of world champion dogs? Like, dog has no decision for that. Right. But like, I found the hardest, one of the reasons why I stopped wanting to breed Malinois. I still want to breed other dogs. I actually want to breed Springer Spaniels. I love Springer Spaniels, and they're adorable, and they don't bite you. For descent work. For detection, and for service work, for some service tasks. You're not going to have a 6 foot tall guy and a seeing eye dog as a little, but so it's just Malinois I don't want to breed, and honestly, it's the people. It's the 5% of dogs that come back to me, and that's it states in my contract the dog has to come back to me, right? Like finding out that a dog that I own the breeding rights to got bred to a Dutchie. Now the puppies look awesome and the puppies are competing, but like it's really disheartening that I spent all this time creating something for someone to just, without permission, take, my breeding and make, like mixed puppies, right? Because these are AKC registered dogs, and I'm not being an elitist. I'm just trying to keep bloodlines the same. Once you now outcross, those dogs are never going to be the same. And, you spend so much time creating something, but, and the dogs are great and the people love the dogs, and that's really all that matters. But how many times, like, and originally the story of Puma was the lady was not going to sell her back to me. And she's like, I'm just letting you know that I'm selling the dog to a vendor. And I was like, they're going to put her on a department as a detection dog. And I'm like, the fuck you are. I go to your contract. And she's like, what? She's like, it just states that I have to tell you where the dog is going. And I'm like, no, go back to your contract. It states that I have the first right of refusal. The dog has to come back to me. And I don't have to give you any money back because you're calling the dog a washout. So after that, I learned my lesson. I then specifically have very long conversations with anyone that wants a dog from me. And I go, if that dog ever leaves your side, you are calling it a wash. You are saying that you are not capable of training it, and it now has to come back to me, and I have to fix it. And my time is worth money, so I'm not going to then buy the dog. Now, like Cheetah I bought back because she wasn't in a bad situation. She was with friends of mine. She just wasn't being utilized to what her skill set, her potential. But they did a great job with her. She came to me chunky.
Right.
She was fat. She looked like a tick.
I remember.
The day she tried to eat you.
Yeah.
She looked like a tick. Her ass was like this big and her head. Right?
Yeah.
So, so we had to cut some weight on her, but and I think she's a gorgeous dog. She was really chunky. But, we could all lose weight, but not you. You could gain weight. But, everyone always wants the opposite. Mm-hmm. Right? Fat people want to be skinny. Skinny people want to be fat. Short people want to be tall. Like, and we are just who we are.
Yeah.
Right? There are things that we can modify about our life, but there's not everything that you can modify. But it's about training the dog in front of us.
Right.
It's about communicating with that individual dog, and I'm not training Cheetah the way I train Puma, and it's not necessarily the way I want to train, but it's the way that dog wants to be trained, and I want her to be happy, and I just enjoy training her, so I'm going to modify. It's like dating someone that speaks another religion, another language, and you now spend the time learning their language.
Right.
Or furthermore, dating someone or being in a relationship with someone and learning their love language. Do they want acts of kindness? Do they want words of affirmation? Do they want gifts? What does the dog want? Give the fucking dog what they want. And furthermore, if you can't give the dog what they want, give them to someone that can give them what they want.
Right.
Again,
for me, I would say it's like how I was going to say, for me, it would be more impressive. Like, okay, if you took a dog from your line, like off of like, if we could do that dream breeding of Puma and Cougar, right? Hypothetically.
I want a Cougar Puma puppy.
Me too.
Yeah.
I want one too.
Okay. I want Puma to be the father and I want Cougar to be the mother.
Yep.
Okay. And that's what I want. And if anyone can produce that, please, and we'll sell some of the litter. I want $50,000 per puppy.
But if somebody took one of those puppies and
that's
got
all the genetics that you have to.
Right. If they took that puppy, got a 3 on that puppy,
yeah,
versus somebody took a shelter dog and got a 1 on it, yeah. I feel like the 1 on the shelter dog is more impressive.
100%.
Because it's like that dog is, everybody looked at that dog's scared, and then you fixed it and titled the dog, like got a 1 as a title. So
arguably, who's the top pit bull on the West Coast? Arguably by way of accomplishments.
Hazel.
Yeah. Hazel. Bottom line, Hazel von Craigslist. Where'd that dog come from? A backyard?
Right.
Now, she's not a rescue. No one's ever claiming, Alessia's not claiming she's a rescue, right? Shout out to Alessia if you're ever in the Santa Barbara area. Go and eat her food. It was absolutely amazing. I've been there multiple times, and that one of the best meals I've ever had. But arguably, by way of accomplishments.
Right.
Right? Like, and I'm not saying she's ever taking that claim, but no one else could take that claim unless they've accomplished more than her.
Exactly.
Right? The only female pit bull
And
to ever
even
get
if
a PSA 2.
I was gonna say, even if the dog you have is naturally better, but she took the dog that's not as naturally good and got it titled higher.
More
yeah,
impressive.
you see what I'm saying? So like,
Because that dog was not selected for those genetics.
right. She just got a random dog.
I'm just
She's
like,
a chef.
Yeah.
She's a chef, and she just got a random dog and said, all right, let's try this thing.
Yeah. I always root for the person that, everyone's not rooting for. Like the person that does not necessarily from the beginning demonstrate the most potential, but I think it's about reading into what people are actually capable of and what dogs are actually capable of. The reason why you weren't washed out was because I could see the potential.
Right.
And I knew if you got washed out, it was my inability to train you.
Right.
It was my inability to teach you what you needed to learn and build you to where you needed to be built to have the confidence to do what you're saying and to teach what you're saying.
Right.
Like the video that Richard made of the Decoy 101 and like you instructing more than me, right? In that video. Yeah. And to me, it made me so happy because seeing that you're teaching the system, you're building the people, like we want to just make trainers better.
Right.
Right. Our goal is not to change anyone other than making them better.
Right.
With what they're doing. Right. And the more the more information you have, the more knowledge that you have, again, who's the washout? Is the trainer the washout? Because like everyone wants to say, oh, is the dog a washout? Is the dog a wash?
That's always the first question.
I sold a dog to a lady, a dog that I had gotten from a breeder, wasn't one of my breeding stock. And I was friends with the lady. And she buys the puppy. She said that this puppy was her unicorn puppy. She watched the puppy at a Jeff Riccio seminar when I was living in Chicago. And it was just a puppy that I was raising and having fun with, putting some foundation on. And the puppy bit really well. And she's like, oh my God, I love that dog. That dog's my unicorn. And because she had washed out a couple of dogs. Again, all of this stuff I'm teaching is like from lessons learned, from mistakes I've made by just trusting people. And I'm like, what are you going to name the puppy? And she's like, I don't know, I'll figure it out. And then she goes back to Canada, and I see that she named the puppy Washi. And I said, Washi? What does Washi mean? Oh, it's like a play on words. It's a pun because I've washed out so many dogs, and this is my unicorn dog, so I'm not going to wash it out. Fuck did she do?
Wash it out.
She washed it out. She washed it out. She washed another dog out. So furthermore, if you have no experience and you have no titles or no accomplishments and you're washing out, oh, you're really just an asshole. Yeah. You're just an idiot. You need to be able to self-reflect, right? Like not every puppy is going to be the best puppy in the world, and not every dog is going to be. Why did I have to wash out my first Malinois puppy? It wasn't going to be strong enough to do PSA 3, and I needed a dog that could be a PSA 3 dog. Mm-hmm. I needed a dog that could take the pressure, and a dog that I was able to demonstrate my skill set as a dog trainer, because a lot of handlers are limited by way of the dog, right? Like when dog and handler, it's like a coach that maybe not the team is the strongest, so they're going to make them better, but they're never going to be world champions. Or what about the team is awesome, but the coach sucks, right? Now, basically what I'm trying to get to is when you have a coach and a team and they are really good and they work well together, like that's beauty in motion.
Yeah.
Like to me as a handler, when will I wash out a handler? I will wash out a handler when they're not coachable. I will wash out a handler when they can't take critique. And I love to be able to mark things in the moment. And so if we ever leave the field and something happens that like either we made a mistake or something happened and we had to have like a post conversation, I'm going to mark it right there. And I had a handler one time, she was going for her PDC, and they're like, decoy, stop fighting the dog, work the dog back to the handler. Handler, go pick up your leash. And she went, And they're like, handler, go pick up your leash. And she's like, and then like after the third time, she's like, oh, they finally went. They're yelling at her. And when she got off the field, and I'm like, hey, we need to work on like your stress levels, right? So I was like going over with her, hey, like, congratulations, because she passed, and I congratulated her. I'm not just making it a sour subject, but I said, hey, we need to work on this. And she lost her shit. She started screaming. This is at a trial. She started screaming and crying. And I was like, and I looked at her boyfriend. I was like, oh my God, save me. And he's like, I can't save you. And she's like, you ruined my day. You took this away from me. And I go, no. I was trying to help you because this was a PDCSD. We now need to go for the PDC and the one. Like, I'm rooting for you. I'm your fucking coach.
Right.
I'd never worked out with that woman ever again. The fact that she was not coachable and she could not just listen to what I was saying, and she was trying to say that I was putting her down. She was just successful. Like, I'm trying to make her more successful by marking in the moment that communication of what we need to work on. Right. So that it's fresh on our brains, because I can't also remember everything. So it has to be something she needs to remember too.
Yeah. I mean, I remember you told me the same thing with Tank in the car. He was because he bit the door. He was like, we gotta fix that for the ones.
But we'll fix it for the ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you got off the field.
Yeah.
But and did it then stick in your brain?
Yeah.
Right.
I've been letting him go out the car now. Try to fix it like that.
You play that hairy line of how far can the dog get out without being all the way out. Because if the dog gets all the way out of the car, we're zero. Done. Right? And so we don't want that. But like, the decoy technically has to attack the dog from wherever they are. And if my dog's head is outside the window, you can't get inside the car. Now, you can give the dog a bite and push the dog into the car and then fight the dog there. But that initial bite's going to be out. Mm-hmm. And I'm letting, I'm not going to let you come all the way into my house. It's like, what do they say when, if someone breaks into your house, like during the day or when the lights are, turn all the lights off. They don't know your way around the house. You know your way around the house, right? So it's the same concept of like, oh no, you're not going to attack me in my car. I'm going to let the dog's head get out the window. And now once the dog's biting, now I have a leash and I'm going to rip you into the car. You can't even shove my dog into the car because I pulled you into the car, right? It's like someone's trying to break into your house and you open up the door and you go, get inside. And you're like, ah! Right? So it's all about fighting on my terms and my territory as much as I can.
Right.
Right? Who's the washout? Is the handler the washout? I would say the percentage of handlers that get washed out because they didn't work well with the level of communication from that coach. Mm-hmm. Right? I've had people that have tried to train me that all they want to do is yell, and I don't respond that way. I don't respond to yelling. I will not acknowledge your yelling. You're being a lunatic, and I'm giving you no acknowledgement. Like, I'm a washout of that. When I got hired to work for the Israeli government, the original person that hired me, his nickname was Tate. Tate is like Israeli for Hebrew for it's like grandfather, right? And he was the grandfather of dog training in Israel. And no matter where we went, everyone knew who he was. You'd be walking into Ben Gurion Airport and a random soldier would be like, oh, Tate. And I was just his assistant. I followed him around and did whatever he asked me to do. And when he was trying to teach me, I had already, certified dogs on explosives, but he's teaching me how they want me to do the job. And, they gave me a dog. It was I think 8-year-old Labrador. His name was Pacino, right? And he was the dog was cool as shit. Dog was like 80 pounds, big yellow lab, goofy as hell. But I was like his 6th handler. And so I'm like walking and I keep walking and he stops and I raise my hand like alert. And he's like, no. And then I'm like, okay, I keep going. And he's like, alert. He's like, no. And he's just yelling at me. He's like, you're a fucking idiot. He's screaming at me. And I'm like, dude, I don't understand. You gave me a dog that's a liar. This dog. And I ended up retraining him, but because I just didn't trust him. And then the funny part was when I left and I handed him off to the next handler, he right away started lying again. Dog was hilarious. A super intelligent dog. But, so like in the middle of training, he went to the bosses and he goes, get rid of him. And they're like, what? They're like, you said, because he originally hired me off of talent, off of raw talent of what he saw. And then when working with me said, get rid of him. So the bosses said, you know what? Let's give him a second shot. Let's put him with a different instructor. And let's see. If that doesn't work, then we'll wash him. They put me with another instructor that actually taught me. And I thrived. And I ended up becoming one of their best, handlers and instructors. And, But if they listened to the first guy, then I was a wash.
Right.
But I wasn't a wash. I just didn't do well with that level of communication.
Yeah.
The next person taught me. And the next person guided me and told me when I was wrong and told me when I wasn't reading the dog. And I would end up being one of their most important handlers, one of their most important instructors, only because of like what I could physically do. The fact that Uzi's trained like a hunting dog, but for explosives. So he has full distance directionals. In PSA, you need directionals, but being able to search for roadside IEDs, being able to stand in the middle of a road and being able to direct the dog in different directions, whereas other handlers are going to have to use long lines. And so I could stop him, turn him left, right, back, and so like I was able to do so much so quickly with my dog. But then they also were like, we love what you do with your dog. Don't do that with our dogs. Like, don't put an e-collar in any of our dogs. And I would e-collar train the dogs when they weren't watching. But like at work, I couldn't have an e-collar. But Uzi, I was allowed to have an e-collar on because he was my dog. And I trained him, So, but basically it's just another story of they tried to wash me out.
Yeah.
I'm going to be an advocate for the handler. I'm going to be an advocate for the dog. I gauge animal cruelty on how the dog responds to the stimuli.
Yeah, because I've seen dogs get like swung and then still keep trying to eat people.
Yeah, they don't care.
Yeah.
So then that's not cruel.
Right.
Because
you're trying to defend yourself.
Now, I've seen dogs where someone literally, we're doing a session and the handler's like, no. And the dog's like,
yeah.
And I'm like, that's so mean. Give him a fucking cookie.
Yeah.
You're mean. You're mean. Don't be mean to puppies.
Right.
Right? If you're mean to puppies, you're a fucking asshole. So like, if you're just washing puppies out that are from lines that like need to mature, look at the dog in front of you. Look at the parents. Ask about the parents. When did the parents mature? Right? And then, okay, so furthermore, like Ryu, Cheetah, you're combining French, Belgian, and Czech lines together, which are going to mature in different speeds. They're going to mature at different rates. You're not going to get a traditional, maturity scale because you're combining so many different genetics.
Yeah.
Right? So like it's all about training the dog in front of you, but sometimes letting the puppy be a puppy. Like sometimes, okay, if I have a young puppy and the puppy, even though when I selected the puppy demonstrated food drive, it could have just been that they were hungry at that time, right? And you caught them at a meal. I'll always ask people when they want to bring litters for me to test. I go, don't feed them before. Feed them like 3, depending on the age of the litter, but like feed them 3 hours before, but don't feed them right before. Every time I've ever gone to test a litter, and someone's like, oh, I just fed them, and they're like sleeping potatoes, and I'm like, oh my fucking God. Oh my God. Like I can't get an accurate read right now because they're just potatoes with legs.
Yeah.
Like, so you want them to be a little hungry. But let's say I have a puppy that demonstrated proper food drive, but now when he's getting older and I'm training him, like he's just not wanting to work for food. That's fine. Is he still confident? Yeah, he's confident. No matter where he goes, he's confident. I'm going to invest in that puppy. Now, if a puppy is demonstrated, like what about puppies that go into fear period? What's the percentage of puppies that go through fear period and then can't work through fear period? It's not that high, but there's still going to be a percentage. There's going to be a 2%. And sometimes that happens, right? Like, okay, how many dogs, here's a first thing, how many dogs that are sold to police departments that were washouts but from top level competitors, like top Schutzen trainers that are like, this dog's not going to get me the points. The dog's not going to put me on a podium. He's gone. Sold. Is the dog a washout?
No.
I mean, it's a washout of that program because they sold the dog.
Yeah.
But, like, the canine handler gets him. He's like, this fucking dog is awesome.
So then that could be another question. Is the program also a wash?
Is the program a wash?
So it's the dog, the trainer, the handler, and the program.
And this is why I enjoy you, because of, the way that you think about things, right? One of the questions, like for me, I train as fast as I can, but as slow as I need to. And Isaiah asked me, well, what about all those steps that you skip because you're saying that they're non-steps? What if I went through and I did all those steps? What would happen? And I go, you're going to make the dog better, right? But I have ADHD and I have no patience. You have a lot more patience than I do. And so I have to get my sessions in correctly and progress at a certain pace because of my patience level.
Yeah.
And because of where my brain is, whereas you have the patience to be able to do those extra steps. I just don't have the patience for it.
Yeah.
Whenever I can skip a step, I'm skipping it, but that's not that. Then I didn't, and it works. So with Uzi, I made a ton of mistakes and I skipped a bunch of steps and I had to go back and fix it all. Mm-hmm. Now, as I'm skipping through life, like I'm skipping happy, like, I'm jumping over puddles.
Yeah.
Like I'm noticing when I can and can't skip, and I'll read right away the second I'm like, okay, this has to take time. This I got to build. The getting cheated to take a toy in front of a decoy, like that was going to take time. And I knew that was going to take time. The original answer would have been fucking, press the button, make them do it.
Right.
And I said, no, I'm better than that. I am better than that. And so I'm going to do with the dog what the dog needs, and I'm not going to go and force it.
Yeah.
So this is what to ponder. And to ponder, is the dog a wash? Is the handler a wash? Is the trainer a wash? Sometimes dogs and handlers and trainers, they just don't vibe.
Right.
The handler and the dog don't vibe, or the trainer and the handler don't vibe. Sometimes people just follow trainers blindly and, get rid of dogs that, like they're like, well, this dog's not going to get you to the podium. And you're like, but you've never been on a podium.
Yeah.
How can you say that? So,
how do you even know who's going to be there that day to get on the podium in front of you?
All of it. It's the whole thing is just, just train the dog in front of you. Enjoy the dog that you have.
Yeah.
Like here at Dogma Academy, we help everyone that needs help. And, furthermore, it's about like making the people better trainers and better communicators, because even though you're going to fuck up this dog, like the saying is you're always going to fuck up your first working dog. Now, it's being dramatic. Mm-hmm. You're not going to necessarily fuck the dog up. Like I fucked Uzi up. I made a ton of mistakes. He still was a PSA 3 dog, but I had to go back and fix it. And I had to acknowledge that I fucked up to be able to do it.
Right.
Some people don't have, or trainers don't have the ability to acknowledge that I fucked up.
Right. Like it, yeah. Like the guy, like, yeah, I'm not even going, but yeah, it's just like how you can't, I already did all those steps. Well, clearly something is messed up.
Did you do it enough?
You know what I'm saying?
Did you do it for long enough? Did you do the steps properly?
That's what, my biggest question is the right way. Did you stick to that step
long enough to go back and fix it?
Right. And if it's not working now, the results are not showing that you did the work, then you got to go back at some point. Unless you don't really care. If you don't care, then okay, get rid of the dog. Cool, you don't care. But like,
I was struggling with Uzi to create, to have attention or any sort of focus around decoys in the threes. PDCs, there's no decoy in the field. Level 1, it's just a guy sitting in a chair. He don't care. Sitting in a chair, he don't care. The 2s, it's just active guys. He didn't care. The 3s, like, I want to say 4, but it wasn't 4 because we made the rule after Uzi. It was 10 decoys in the field screaming at you, and that dog would not leave a fight. Like, he took that shit personally. And it was very hard to get him to like turn it off and focus on me. And I went around, and I want to say I spent over $10,000 attending seminars, paying for working spots, trying to get people to help me to fix it. And I went to a lot of the top trainers, and a lot of them told me to like put a prong collar on him and just make him do it. And I'm like,
but there's no prong collar on the field, yeah.
No. If you put a prong collar on that dog,
he'll eat you.
Like, that dog was hyper neck sensitive, and now he's like, oh, we're fighting? Oh, you're going to control me? I'll control you. And then it was just a fight, so you're not actually communicating anything. Now you're just fighting the dog. Like, the dog was a highly pain-stimulated animal. Pain sent him into drive. Now the prong collar, like, you know. And I went to Bart, and Bart's answer was, wait him out. And I said, wait him out? I'm like, dude, we're going to be here for like a half an hour. He goes, we wait. And I go, but this is going to take for, I think it was a half an hour session or a 20-minute session. And he gave him 3 bites in 30 minutes. Because it took the dog 10. He goes, don't correct him. Don't tell him to look at you, say nothing. And we're just going to sit there. And everyone just sat there for 10 minutes until the dog went like this. And I told him to bite. Now, to me, that was a tremendous learning lesson by way of it taught me that waiting does work, but not with that dog. So that was not the answer for that dog. So what I say about that was it was the answer, but not the answer for that dog. And that taught me a ton of like, wait them out. We wait them out when they're young. We wait them out when we have patience to wait them out. Once we've passed a certain point, you can't wait them out anymore. Now the dog's got to be learning like this. And so I had my mentor Waleed was coming back. He had moved to Florida. He was coming back to New York to give a seminar, and I called him and I'm like, dude, I need your help. And he's like, what's going on? I said, I've spent like 10 grand going around to different trainers. And he's like, dude, you're making yourself vulnerable and all these people are taking advantage of you. And I'm like, well, I have enough humility to know when something's above my head, right? At that stage in my career, I didn't have the answers. And so I'm going to go to people that are more experienced than me to get the answers. And he's like, well, what's the problem? And I tell him the problem, and he starts laughing at me. And I'm like, or he starts laughing. I don't know if he's laughing at me. I said, what are you laughing about? And he goes, I'm going to show you how to fix it in a weekend. And I go, you're going to show me how to fix it? I go, I just spent 10 fucking grand going around getting all this. You're going to tell me how to do it in a weekend? And I'm like, yep. He showed me how to fix it in a weekend. We didn't fix it in a weekend. He showed me how to fix it in a weekend. So to find out more about that, turn into next week on our episode. We're going to talk about training decoy versus trial decoy. And we want to thank everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Isaiah. As always, thank you, Heather, for manning our board and always being here and supporting.
Moral support.
Thank you, guys. See you guys next week.